And hello, everybody. 2 minutes. We're going to start the peer presentation here at Diamond Head in 2 minutes. Alan Shanosky has a presentation, and we are going to bring you the audio and show you the PowerPoint presentation in a split screen so that you can see what he has researched and what his presentation is. I feel like I'm calling a golf game. A lot of people in the audience here. It's a 9-footer on the 14th green. And wait till you see, it's like, I don't know, the 15th or 16th slide. It's, can you hear me okay? I should make sure the sound is okay. It's like the 15th or 16th slide, a proposal. That's really going to blow your mind when you see it. It really is cool. It gave me a little sneak peek of it, and it really looks nice. So I'm guessing you can hear me okay. If not, you're reading my lips, and there's no sound. Surprised the audience isn't bigger. We have a bigger online audience than they have here. We have 1 minute, and Becky's going to introduce Alan. We are not going to carry the whole meeting. This is like a 30-minute presentation and then doing committee reports. Best sound ever. And that's when I'm going to bug out and head on home. Got to get ready for tomorrow. Big day tomorrow. Remember to arrive early if you're coming tomorrow. Park at Lynn Hall Park. Karen Woodson just appeared. The mayor is here. Town manager is here. Operations manager Frankie's here, and Ray Sandelli is here. The reason the meeting was pushed back a half an hour is because Ray Sandelli wanted to see the presentation. He's from Lee County. He represents the beach, and he was a little short on time. So I'm going to take the picture off me because you don't really need to be seeing me call a golf game. You can see the audience now. And we are. We have Wink News is here and Fox 4 is here. It's a big deal, this pier. See John King in the front row. Some faces from the beach you recognize. You're welcome, Elizabeth. Nice to see you all watching. Nice big audience online. And Becky, who is like the leader of Let's Go FMB, is moments away from introducing Alan. Alan and his wife and their dog traveled up and down the East Coast, visiting 30 or 40 or 50 piers in all different communities, and took notes, met with people in those communities, and put together this killer presentation that I'm going to pop up on the screen and share with you there. Hopefully, I haven't figured out how to get PowerPoint to go to full screen, so hopefully you can see that. If anybody knows how to make PowerPoint a full screen, I can do it before they start, but I don't use PowerPoint. I just use Facebook. So there's obviously some kind of button somewhere that I can't find to make that a full screen. You're welcome, Jim. 157 people watching. It's nice for a Wednesday, middle of the day. You people need to get jobs out there or watching at your job on your phone. There's Becky, ready to go whenever you are.
People from the county were invited, so I'm going to start this out with a couple updates.
Okay. All right. Everything's on the fly. No worries. Becky is going to do a couple updates from the committee because we're waiting for several members of Lee County. Don't want to do this peer presentation without members of Lee County. As far as I'm concerned, I've got plenty of time. So they're going to do a few committee updates is what I'm guessing. And then hopefully the Lee County folks will be here. Or retired. There you go, Patty. I should have guessed that first. More people are retired than anything else. We're getting close to 200 people. I guess it was a good idea to stream this. I wasn't going to do it. He was going to just stay at home and take a nap. But decided to do it because you guys asked for it. Should have brought my glasses. I can't see too far. So this was the Let's Go FMB. It's really like their second meeting that they've had so far. First meeting was before summertime. where it was a very crowded meeting. People wanted to get involved and see what the group was going to be about. Oh, I got the microphone too high for Becky, but we'll see. No, where everything is set up here for you. Standing by for Becky. You're probably not going to be able to hear it too well because I have the microphone set up for Alan. I'm going to have to crank it up. Want me to lower that?
Screen. So hopefully weather will improve until tomorrow and it'll rain again.
Focus, folks.
Thank you. Okay, what I wanted to tell everyone, we're going to be changing the agenda just a little bit, the order of the agenda. So I'm going to go through and tell you a little bit about Let's Go before we get into some of the committee updates and the peer presentation. We have a wonderful group of additional people that are on their way here, got delayed from the county and the Department of Transportation. This is really exciting. We're thrilled to have everybody. And so we're just going to go through some simple business before until they arrive, and then I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves real quick so everybody knows who everybody is, and then we'll go into some discussion at the end of the presentation. First of all, my name is Becky Weber. I'm the spokesperson for Let's Go Fort Myers Beach, and thrilled to have you all here today. First of all, I just want to go through real quickly a little bit about, if you haven't been to our meetings yet or don't know us, who we are. And we came about in June, a meeting of us, how can we help? How can we contribute to the resilience and the rebuilding of Fort Myers Beach? As a resident, I care about this island. We all care about this island and everybody on it and our visitors. And we want it back. We understand this is not a sprint, but boy, we want to walk real fast to get to the point where we are rebuilt. A little bit about us. We believe that due to the catastrophe which hit Fort Myers Beach, extraordinary flexibility and measures need to be supported for our community to recover. We believe working together as one community. What I mean by that, I mean government, residents, businesses, all of us. Makes us stronger and will help our government at all levels to help us. To do this, we need the participation and volunteers from the entire community. And we'll be asking you again, we need some more volunteers for some of our committees. We believe there's a way to find consensus in the community. Want to stay positive. That glass is almost always half full, and let's just work to try and fill it up a little bit more. Because negativity is not going to get us anywhere. Only positivity will get us to where we need to be. We believe the old F&B cultural vibe can be saved. Recognizing both residents and businesses will have to rebuild differently. We know that we have to change our building codes, or upgrade them, I should say, because we all want our houses to and businesses to be there after the next storm. I don't want to walk in and kind of walk past and see if there's anything left. I'm sure you guys don't either. Okay, today, as I said, we're going to be adjusting the presentation just a little bit as we wait for some other really important people that need to be here for our peer presentation to arrive. So I'm going to hold Alan off just a few more minutes, and I'm going to ask Lori Albion from the Business Committee to come up and give us an update.
Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, I'm not the main speaker normally, so please bear with me. On the business committee, we actually have 3 different groups that are involved. We have the marketing committee, we have the pink zone committee, and we have the business committee. And I'm going to be giving a presentation for all 3. So let me start with the marketing committee. We've had a really wonderful volunteer, Kelly, who has been working on a phased marketing plan that is going to take into consideration both the recovery and the rebuild. And we're going to try and one of the pieces of that is going to be doing a website that will hopefully be a resource where everything that you need to know about Fort Myers Beach, whether you're a resident or a visitor, will be available there. One of the things that we really want to do is highlight businesses as they're rebuilding and reopening, to really kind of build the momentum, to let visitors know to come back to the beach, whether they're local visitors or out of state visitors, so that they come back to our area, because we don't want to lose them. We need them to help support the businesses as well as the residents. We're working right now on putting some numbers together with that, what that's going to look like as far as a budget. And we're also have been working with the Lee County Visitor and Convention Bureau. They have a lot of online resources that we've been able to use to identify who the target market is, because during different times of the year, that target market is going to be a different segment, whether it's in-state travel in the summer, the European visitors, we have our seasonal visitors that are coming from out of state. So it'll be coordinating all of that into one comprehensive marketing plan that will go before the board, hopefully fairly soon. For the pink zone and the business committee, when we got together and we had a meeting and started talking about what we wanted to present, we found that the 2 committees actually came up with very, very similar concerns. So we're going to give a presentation from both of them that are going to address both committees' concerns. First thing is, the committees have been following everything that the LPA and the town council have been doing very closely. We're getting ready to request a meeting with our liaison, Karen Woodson from the town council, the town attorney, and someone from permitting to discuss opportunities for streamlining the rebuild process for small businesses. And we're really focused on the small businesses that have already been here and that are already participating in the community. And a lot of those small business owners are also your neighbors and your friends. So the pink zone is what we've been calling it. I think the town is calling it an overlay, is basically being looked at to accomplish some relief from the current rebuilding codes. They've done this with a couple of the other issues that have come up on the residential side, as far as like the parallelogram lots and some things like that. So we're going to be taking them some language that hopefully will help give some relief to the small business owners in their rebuilding process, and see how that goes. We know that we need to bring back the boutique hotels, the small hotels, and the town actually has a designation for those, which is under 50 units. And we know we need those because we need to bring visitors back, because as much as we love the residents, we know that the residents solely can't support all of the small businesses that we need in the area. And we recognize that we not only need shopping, we also need restaurants to eat in, but we also need other services, like we need doctor's offices, we need dentists. The island needs an urgent care center. So those are some of the services that we've identified that aren't currently here that we will be working on trying to bring in. So by creating these mixed use centers, which have been called many things over the period of time, I know when they started the comp plan, they were actually calling them nodes, and then they were calling them business centers. We've called them pink zones. Now they're getting an overlay designation. So we're going to be working to kind of clarify that, because really they are all the same thing. So by putting these mixed use centers in, we want to bring in services that the visitors need, and more importantly, that the residents need. And by establishing these centers throughout the island, instead of having them focused either on just the north or the south end, it'll do a couple things. It'll be a traffic reduction act because it will, by keeping these services closer to the homes and where people are staying, it will reduce the amount of traffic that's on the road. And the idea is to get down to where you're only traveling a half a mile to a mile. For some of the smaller services, you can't do that obviously with a grocery store, but so we're going to be looking at that. There's a couple other ideas that we've come up with transportation that we're going to pursue, but we know that the main thing is that we need to make it where it's a walkable area where you can either walk, ride your bike, take a golf cart, take the trolley. There's several different options, but we need to keep those closer to our homes. The other thing that we're working on is a survey that's going to go out to all the residents, asking them what they think they need in the centers. And we want to segregate that by different areas on the beach. So once we figure out how many overlay areas we'll be able to do a survey that will identify by address what the people want, so that we can look at different areas, like maybe the mid-island of the beach might have different wants and desires than the southern end of the beach. So by being able to segregate the responses to the survey, we'll be able to better figure out what people want in their particular neighborhood. And that's going to be the goal of the survey and the results of that survey, which will then be able to go back into planning to figure out if there's going to be a commercial node, what services should go in that commercial node. So that is what we've been working on so far, and we're going to continue to work on, but if you guys have any suggestions, if anybody has any input, we would love to hear it at the committee level. So thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. John McLean. John is our chairperson of the resident committee.
And this is Julie Warner, who is leading up the landscaping portion of the residential committee. So we have three main areas under residential. We have the landscaping, arts, and then the permits issue. And we're bringing people together. What we're recognizing is that there are a lot of organizations around Fort Myers Beach that have got, the Sparrow Arts Group. There's the MRF. There's the Garden Club. There's all of these other areas that are also working within this. So we're looking to really reach out and bring some of those folks into our organization as well, in order to try and capture all of the great work that's being done out there. We had an opportunity to meet with the town manager and Frankie and staff and talk about a lot of the permitting issues. And, there's a significant amount of buzz around permitting, but a great deal of it is either a lack of understanding or communication. And in fact, there's a great deal of information that's available out there, but it's just very difficult to navigate and understand, especially for all of us that have never had to do this before. So one of the things that we're really looking forward to doing is, once we get the website up and running, is to use our own experiences to help navigate that process, to help bring, what our experiences are with a group of people that, quite frankly, are really trying to help us all rebuild. And by being able to really open up those lines of communication and increase the amount of understanding, we think there'll be much better dialogue and hopefully a great deal of movement. And we're seeing a lot of that misunderstanding, and it's a shame because everybody is impacted so personally that it's very difficult to kind of take a step back and actually approach it with understanding and empathy. So that's what we're looking to help foster. With the arts group, we have a person, Ethan Key, who is working with that. He's been reaching out to some of the other organizations around the state. For example, in Miami-Dade, these are some really large organizations that have got a great desire to help us, not just because we're a small community, but because we're a small community got ravaged by Ian. And so there's a lot of love around there, around the state to help us out. And we'll be looking at drawing on some of those resources. Anyways, wanted to introduce, come up and Julie, and Let them know what you've been working.
So I'm on leading the residential landscaping committee. And at this point I have, yourself and then Sherry, I don't see her in this room. And let's see, we got Sherry, Scott, Steve Johnson, and Catherine Clark. So we're just ramping up. And so we're gathering the information as much as we can. And the information is for the residents so they can understand some of the native plants, ideally, that we could have them plant in their yards and then give them guidance on what the plants would be that would be beneficial for the environment and for them, easy to take care of. And then also help provide information on there's a few ordinances here and there that might be need to be taken into consideration when you're doing some planting. And we're also working with Rose Larkin, and she's here, and she's a master gardener. And she's also very active in so many different Lee County gardening clubs. And but we're in the midst of creating a website, and hopefully that's going to be available. So they'll make like in October, you're hoping, right? Yeah, and then when that website is up and running, you'll be able to easily get information about the ordinances, some of the ideas to give the residents on the plantings that could be used in their yards. And, like also, there's going to be some limitations on like if you want to put hedges out, you've got limitations on how far the setbacks are and how high the hedges can be. So anyway, until then, I put a document out there that Rose had created that gives you some guidance at this point. And it's out on the Let's Go Fort Myers Beach Facebook page. And at this point, there's just a few of us on the committee, but eventually we might need more people to help out. So.
Oh, and the farmer's market.
And the farmer's market. And sorry, Rose, I left your brochure over there. So anyway, when you stop by the farmer's market, you can stop by the Merck tent, and they've got a wealth of information there for native planting. Fridays 9 to 1. Fridays from 9 to 1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Cindy Johnson, and I am the chairman of Design and Infrastructure for Let's Go FMB. So right now, our subcommittees are the Pier, which you're going to get a presentation on today. This group has worked from the beginning to get something together as soon as possible, and now they have something to present today that I have seen, and I think you'll be pleased, and it'll be something that we can push forward. A second group I have is the parking subcommittee, and that is chaired by Chris Primo. He couldn't be here today, but he will be making a presentation next meeting, and he's been working hard getting the input of the private parking lot owner opinions and ideas. He's talked to town manager Andy, so he's told me today he has a lot to present next month. And this is Jilliana, and she's the chairman of our transportation committee. So I'm going to let her take it from here.
Okay. So basically, these are 3 ideas in order to cut down the traffic on the island. Okay, so the first one to cover is the tram. Right now, right now the tram goes from Times Square to the library and back. We'd like to extend that so it actually goes from Times Square to Santini Plaza. And so this way it creates less car traffic, gives incentive for hotels to discourage visitors bringing cars to Fort Myers Beach, good to cut down on DUIs, keeps and brings more business on the island. So, and then we have for the trolley, the 410 trolley, in the future, we hope to have parking off of the island on both the north and the south. And this would be great to be able to people leave their cars there and then come onto the island. So right now, the trolley 410 goes from Lover's Key to Times Square. It does not go over the bridge, and I understand why it doesn't, because it just wants to keep more on track on their timetable, going back and forth instead of going over the bridge and trying to get back over. But we would probably need to extend that trolley to also go over the bridge to where the parking is on the north side to bring people back instead of having to wait for another bus. Because right now, as it is, if you want to go over the bridge, you have to wait for another bus to go over the bridge. So just some bullet points on that. Let me see this gives more incentive again for hotels to discourage visitors to bring their cars to Fort Myers Beach. And people from Fort Myers, Estero, Naples, and Bonita Springs would not bring their cars on board to kind of cut down on the traffic, so that it would just be an easy shot right there on the bridge to come back over the bridge on both sides and onto the island. Here's one that a lot of people feel very strongly about, and this is the bike lane. Okay, the bike lane, the cars drive with their wheels over all the time over the bike lane. The bike lane is actually really too narrow to be safe. And in season, cars like to drive in the bike lane so that they can see how far the traffic is going in front of them, and then too many bike and car accidents. So to widen that sidewalk, and if we were to take out the strip of grass, that little skinny strip of grass out, that would avoid some maintenance costs, would widen the sidewalk for both pedestrians and bicycles. We can keep signs on the sidewalk saying, bicycles are only allowed to go X amount of speed and to stay on the right or the left. And so this would encourage bicycling over car driving or driving cars, and less fatalities and injuries from cars, and more family friendly because it's going to be safer. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. And if you have any other committees you feel need to be started under design and infrastructure, see me. If you want to volunteer for parking or transportation, please let our sub-chairman know. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to just turn this a little bit, and I am going to first, I like everybody who's on the peer committee to stand up, because you guys have done an outstanding job. So I thank all of you, and now I'm going to invite Alan from the peer committee to do a presentation, and I would like you to first spend just a couple of minutes about how you came up with this and where you have traveled.
Thank you. Before I begin, we find ourselves on the eve of our first remembrance of Ian. So I would ask that everyone please pause. Let's take a moment of silence and remember our neighbors and friends that perished almost a year ago today. Well, I'm Alan Shanosky, a third-generation resident on this island who's been fortunate enough to have 4 generations of his family, fish off of the piers that grace Times Square area. With me today is my lovely wife of 30 years and poor woman that's had to put up with me talking nothing but piers for the past 3 months. Little did I know, when Alex King tapped me on the shoulder 3 months ago and said, "Hey, you're with us," did I know what I'd be in store for. Within a few days of the peer committee, rebuild the peer committee forming, we hit the ground running. We had a mission statement. I'm not going to make you read it, but within the mission statement, there were 5 stepping stones to what we considered success. And those stepping stones were research, site visits, rough design ideas, budget, and funding. Under research, what was one of the things Ian took from this community and county? He took our fishing pier. Our fishing pier was a 560-foot long, approximately 8-foot wide T-terminus pier. Its original fishing pier in the 30s was wood. We built the concrete fishing pier in '76, And then the current pier was rebuilt in 1991 after a storm which I couldn't remember a name of, or it was an unnamed storm. Now, the pier is certainly the calling card of the county in Fort Myers Beach. It appears on apparel. It appears in national advertising. Recently, it appears on license plates. And ironically, when I made a reservation at the local hotel to give my dog Brody a little more room than our camper this week, it popped up on the banner as things to do around town while I'm here. So we had to rebuild the pier committee. First question we had to ask, why rebuild the pier? Tough question. Not really. Rebuilding the pier is economic revitalization to this county and town. We hope that it's inspirational and will add excitement to the rebuild occurring here on the island. We know that there are those that were forced or chose to leave after the storm. There are those, many amongst this room, that have chose to stay and rebuild, but there's a large portion of our population that is on the fence. And perhaps this would be the spark that helps them stay and rebuild. It is the #1 tourist attraction in Lee County if you remove the beach. It replaces a historic landmark. We feel we can increase safety for swimmers, boaters, and tourism activities, and of course, to fish. Lee County visitors, we have a lot of them. Because of COVID and Ian, it's hard to get a trajectory. However, we can work with an average. During the past 2 years, we've had over 4.5 million visitors a year come to Lee County. Of those 4.5, we know that 35% of them visit the Fort Myers Beach Fishing Pier, the #1 tourist attraction of Lee County. So what's possible? We feel we can create a better visitor fishing experience, certainly provide more capacity and room, more parking, better pedestrian flow, increased safety, increased accessibility, certainly better facilities, and we can maintain the town property and easements that are currently in place. What's not possible? There's a lot of rules when you build a pier. Water-supported establishments cannot exist above the ocean. No food or vending. Showers below flood level. Lynn Hall restrooms would no longer exist. And believe it or not, the Southwest Florida Wildlife Conservancy frowns on overhead casting. Site visits. Boy, my wife and I have seen an awful lot of piers. We've spent 5 to 6 weeks traveling the East Coast and the coast of Florida with our trusty companion Brody. And these are just a small sampling of the locations we visited. And along the way, we met some amazing people, town managers, administrators, directors of operations, directors of public affairs, staff. They were extremely hospitable. Special hats off and thank you to the Surfside folks who are in the process of building their pier. It's not open yet. It's hoping to be done by the end of the year. They opened it up to us while they were installing the handrails and the ramps, spent several hours with us, gave us some incredible information. And I might want to add that they wanted us to know that when they originally approached FEMA, they said they don't pay for piers. However, when their consultant pointed out that after Hurricane Sandy in New York, New Jersey, they did pay for several piers, they ponied up $10 million to replace the Surfside Pier. So, some technology. Oh, I don't have my pointer. Excuse me. I have to get my pointer. So, we were very keen on new technology when constructing piers, and we were really trying to figure out what people are doing. And one of the first things we noticed was the adoption of float-away decking. So you see the decking underneath this pier just sitting on the risers. From above, I believe that's Folly Beach. This is Surfside. They use a synthetic lumber, and these are simply the cast stringers on either side of it. Some older, early adapters of the technology, which has really only been around for about 18 years, constructed them out of wood. On my next slide, I want to show you, this is Juno Beach. This is prior to a storm. This is in preparation of a storm. This is not after a storm. So here you see the pier with the float-away wood decking. Whenever they have a hurricane warning along their coast, they actually remove their decking, store it back by the main entry, and then replace it after the storm. So I said, well, why do you do that? They said, well, we were getting tired of going miles up and down the beach to retrieve it. They did want us to stress that don't do wood. Wood is hard to maintain. However, this is an interesting experiment in the effectiveness of float-away decking. And they were one of the earlier adapters. That pier is actually almost 20 years old and has withstood every storm. Piling options. So the traditional current construction method for pilings on a new or recently new pier would be to use cast pilings. Now, our friends in Surfside, they happened to hire a contractor that built piers and bridges. So after they were awarded the program, they approached the town and said, you know, we can provide a better view, a stronger piling at 7 figures less cost if they did poured-in-place circular piling similar to a bridge. It created 30-foot spans between each piling. They weren't sure how the residents would appreciate this new technology. And apparently, most of them agreed that when you're on the beach, you can see through the pier. There's a better line of sight. And along the way, we found some interesting additions. This little guy right here, this bronze turtle. The kids were clamoring to sit on that turtle and get their picture taken. It was tucked in a corner. I don't know what its purpose was, but it gave us the idea, when we show you some of the renderings, to create areas where we could potentially highlight the amazing wildlife of this island and county. Manatee, dolphin, heron, sea turtle. As well as interpretive graphic panels that discuss the history of the town, the history of the pier. What type of fish do you catch off this pier? What type of bait do you use? What hooks do you use? It's a great opportunity to educate the visitors to this beach. I got to talk about fish cleaning stations just for a moment. So, no water-supported business allowed above the ocean, except for a fish cleaning table. However, fish cleaning table, because they don't want you throwing carcasses over the edge that would eventually choke a pelican, needs to be accompanied with a fish grinder. If you have a fish grinder, it needs to be a child-safe, child-operable fish grinder. So like I said, a lot of rules. Just a few others. Lighting, turtle-friendly accent lighting in the cast pilings, as opposed to overhead. Everyone we met with said, do not use overhead lighting. Birds, damage, dangerous maintenance, cost, upkeep. So there was amber accent lighting in just about every pier. This was nice touch too. It had reef-friendly, eco-friendly sunscreen dispensers. Now, rough design ideas. That's where the rubber hits the road, right? First thing our committee did, which by the way is an amazing committee, was we acknowledged the various stakeholders we had involved, and there's many of them. First, we had, of course, property and easements owned by the town. Then we have the property and pier owned by the county. We have our neighbors to the pier, the Times Square businesses, as well as surrounding businesses, the residents of Fort Myers Beach and the residents of Lee County. So our goals when we set out discussing what the pier should look like was we wanted it to be tasteful. We wanted it to maintain a simple appearance. definitely wanted to acknowledge the historic roots that, as every pier began in Florida, it began as a fishing pier. So our approach was simple: a nod to the past, an eye on the future. We felt we could improve the visitor fishing experience, create a separation of fishing and visitor space while maintaining interaction between both, because that's the best part. You walk out the end of the pier, hey, what are you catching? And you don't necessarily want to step on the mess that's out there. And incorporate modern building technology for longevity. It's a tough question. My wife and I, the first question we asked every community we visited was, why'd you decide on 947 feet? How come it's 1,053 feet? We thought there'd be a formula. Is it residents divided by tourists, multiplied by households? We were hoping there'd be a simple solution. There were two common mentions. One was, it was there, it's what we had before. But the other one was, we wanted to be out where the fish were. So, if there was a formula, we drilled down on 3 locations: Folly Beach, Nags Head, and Wrightsville. And then we compared some stats to Fort Myers Beach. Pretty much we blow away every metric you can think of: population, households, annual visitors. Town size, not so much, but we're up there. And you can see their lengths of their piers. So, length of the pier. We had a 560-foot pier. What else is around town? Dania Beach, 900 feet. Folly Beach, 1,049. Wrightsville Beach, 1,200. And Nags Head, 1,000. Now, geographically astute, why are you comparing our pier to the East Coast piers? Well, let's see what the West Coast has to offer. Venice Beach, 700 feet, nice pier. Pensacola, 1,471 feet. Panama City, 1,500. And the longest pier in Florida, Navarre, at 1,545 feet. I was kind of surprised to find out that Fort Myers Beach had the 3rd smallest pier in the state. So, there's a publication, I think Alex may have sent to me, or Dennis, another committee member, put out by the state of Florida, 638 pages. Talks a lot about wave energy, tides. If you get through it, they give you an honorary degree in engineering. Waiting for mine to arrive. However, there's a warning in that publication. And I should note that Surfside in another state used that manual to build their pier because it's much more stringent than any other state. So, in there's a warning. This is St. Augustine, 600-foot pier. And then the powers that be said, well, we need to harden this coastline. We need to nourish the beach. And they put in 600 feet of sand. So there's a landlocked pier. The depth of the water at the end of that pier is 1 foot. Not much of a fishing pier. So, increasing the size of the pier, if it's considered, we feel would add additional safety to our community. Now, I'm a boater. I'm a boater around this island, as many of you are. I was shocked to find out. I always thought you had to stay 300 feet away from a pier. It's just something you knew. No one ever told me. I just thought that was the rule. Well, our committee contacted the Coast Guard. Our committee contacted Fish and Wildlife, and we researched the town's ordinances until we were numb, and we couldn't find any ordinance on how far you should stay away from a pier. But we're going to go with 300 feet, because that's the way I think most boaters understand it. So we have the 300 feet safety buffer around the pier. We have our no boat buoys located along the shoreline. And let's call it the boat lane. If anybody takes a visitor around this beach, either from the north or the south, you get to a certain point, then you start angling out around the pier to avoid the parasailers, the pier, the fishers, all the shenanigans going on at Lani Kai. And you wind up with a safety area around the pier. So let's say that pier is now 1,000 feet. Use that same 300-foot buffer. We still have the no boat buoys. The pre-storm boat lane is far within what the new boat lane would be. And it would create an additional area of safety, almost creating a perfect spot for the parasailers, the jet ski renters, et cetera, while improving the view from the pier. So we honed in on 1,000 feet. Now, how wide? We had a very narrow pier. Before we start showing the following slides, I'd like to just mention that during the process, we developed certain renderings for ourselves amongst our committee. I'm going to share some of them with you now and some videos which I'll share with you. These are not our final suggestions. They will occur at the end of the presentation. But just to get a sense of what we went through, and for visual assistance, we incorporated them into the presentation. So we had an 8-foot wide pier. My wife and I couldn't find a pier less than 22 feet wide, and we visited dozens of them. So we're just choosing 20 feet as displayed here on the right. The committee developed two options. So option one, replace the pier in the same location, of course longer, wider, and higher. Challenges, at such a height, it would require about 170 to 220 foot of ADA ramping with breaks every 30 feet. Be no area for restrooms, and the capacity would certainly be limited. And I want you to remember capacity. Option two, we can relocate the pier and incorporate it with an elevated plaza. Challenges here would be increased cost. The benefits are many. A single entity project. County owns Lynn Hill Park. Pier connects to the county property. County owns the pier. No use of town lands. The plaza, the easements, and the property the town owns would stay intact. We feel we can increase parking 80 to 90, potentially 100 parking spots under that elevated plaza, which would cover Lynn Hall Park. We could have new restrooms and showers on the plaza. The capacity for our visitors would be increased tremendously. It would become a permanent home for the farmers market, many other nonprofits in the community, many committees. There could be structures, volunteers, educating our visitors. There'd be room for everybody. We'd like to see the plaza controlled by Fort Myers Beach, perhaps through an interlocal agreement with the county, where we lease the plaza for $1 for 100 years. This way we still issue the permits and performances, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot of talk about this vibe. My early remembrances of coming to this island were across the swing bridge that connected Old San Carlos. There wasn't a vibe then, but it was just a great place, and there is a good vibe here. This plaza would go a long way to reinforcing that the vibe is coming back. It would be a sunset celebration similar to Key West Mallory Square. And it would be an area we feel people would be attracted to, not trying to avoid. So to better explain, anyone who's been to Key West, the end of Duval Street is Mallory Square. It's approximately 70,000 square feet. Again, not the final rendering, just a proposed plaza above Lynn Hall Park would be about 75,000 square feet. So, capacity. The numbers are all there. It's simple to figure out. This is just a partial example of a pedestrian increase post-Ian at sunset. We've listed two locations, Margaritaville, because we know the numbers, and pick any other resort that's going to be expanded and or built. We know that the Lee County occupancy rate is 68.7. We know Margaritaville has 254 rooms, and the average occupancy is 3 people. Now, Lee County's occupancy rate is substantially less than Fort Myers Beach. So these are all very conservative numbers. Oh. And then pick, I'm sorry, go back one. And then pick just one other resort. It could be anyone. These are these are resorts and locations that contributed no pedestrians to Times Square pre-Ian. And now we're looking at a big increase post-Ian of pedestrian traffic to Times Square. Pick any location you want. It could be Pink Shell, Lighthouse, Matanzas. It could be Arches. Let's just say they have 350 rooms. occupancy is 721. Let's just say a portion of them go to Times Square at sunset. So what you're looking at is just two locations, an increase of 623 people during sunset going to Times Square. So an average daily sunset visit to the pier, based on certain numbers, we have figured as 2,648. We know that 4.6 million people come to Lee County every year. We know 74% of them don't stay on the island. We know 26% of them do. However, we know that of that 74%, 35% of them come to visit the Fort Myers Beach Fishing Pier. The right pie chart. If you look at day trippers, some new neighboring resorts, current residents and hosts of guests, visitors staying on Fort Myers Beach, and some additional new resorts, you're looking at a daily average of approximately 2,648 people. Now, these are conservative numbers, and these are daily averages. Does anybody want to guess in peak season? Is it 2 times? 3 times? We have the potential of 8,000 people descending on Times Square at sunset. We would like to have a nice pier for them to go to. So, these were preliminary. These are not the final. These were strictly for our committee to discuss and hone and improve. You'll see the finals after this. So, option 1. We create a 20-foot wide pier with 30-foot bump outs at every shade station along the way. It's approximately 1,000 feet long. We wanted a natural separation of fisher and visitor at the end of the pier, the terminus of the pier. So by lowering the fishing section of the pier, it does many things. It creates less of a reel up. Anybody who's ever fished off a pier, you don't want to be lifting 16, 18 feet, especially if you get the big one. So we've now reduced the height of the fishing section. This is a valid concern. And this isn't even drawn accurately. So again, preliminary, just for internal committee discussions. And we're about to show you option 2. Again, the renderings were done quickly. It looks massive. It's not that massive, trust me. It's approximately 150 by 500 feet. Same pier, located 60 feet to the north, connecting to an elevated plaza. Little out of scale, doesn't respect the build 2 lines you hear so often about. However, this elevated plaza does increase the parking capacity at Times Square by at least 90 spots. So, after the committee had moments to digest this, talk about it, argue about it, discuss it, we knew it was time to go back to the drawing board, so to say. So certainly we did. We wanted to take a finer look at these options. So back to the drawing board. We realized the end of that pier, the terminus pier, did absolutely nothing for history. And we truly wanted to acknowledge the history of our pier. So we returned to that T-terminus, but we improved it. We had to respect the build 2 lines of Lynn Hall Park, be more dimensionally accurate, and certainly take into account the ADA considerations. And particular importance to myself was the nod to history. So the image you've seen circulating around. This is the new terminus that we propose. It can work on either option. What you see here is a 3-level terminus. The lower level is not a cafe or a sun station. This is your fishing section right here. ADA ramp and stairs. It's a nice size. Would accommodate benches, fishing poles, and a lot of fisher people. It's perfect. So, same level of the pier is the pedestrian flow and a large space for visiting sunset. You increase the sunset view by doing a 3-foot elevation to a shaded structure, ramp up. So you have 1 ramp down, 1 ramp up. You could have a lot of people here, a lot of people here, all with the beautiful view of the horizon and the sunset. Natural interaction between visitors residents and fishing is right there. You can still talk to the people you want to talk to. Reverse angle. We eliminated one shade station, but we still have those 30-foot bump outs at the shade station. Remember, this is 20 feet wide. It's 30 at the shade, allowing us those areas to create selfie spots, photo opportunities. In addition, under the shaded spots, if there were back-to-back benches, that'd be perfect for the interpretive graphic panels that we discussed earlier. Overhead view. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Paint the wavy wall. Sorry. So we really like the idea of the sunset bleachers. So we said, hey, let's incorporate a performance space. Now this plaza could be anything. This plaza could be lushly landscaped like the High Line through New York. This plaza can be an educational opportunity. This plaza could be anything. It could be adaptable. It could grow with the town. New restrooms, we accommodated enough restrooms for 1,200. Again, increase the parking. Now, you'll see 4 towers. These are stair towers. They could also be elevator towers. Each tower could accommodate 2 elevators. We don't feel we need 8 elevators. However, on the Estero side or the east side, we feel that an elevator in each tower would be a prudent idea. What you don't see pictured here, because we didn't have time and there's still much debate going on, is the ramp up to the plaza. So, the next slide. This area here, which is the southern side of the plaza, southern side of the elevated plaza, would be the ramp, the large ramp that deposits pedestrian workflow directly into Times Square and the business community. Also would be an egress for the old San Carlos visitors to come right up to the plaza. We envision stairs down the beach and then a north ramp connecting down to the beach. So we have many egress points. Now look, this isn't what's going to be built. This is just a suggestion that a handful of residents came up with, okay? We called in a lot of favors for the renderings and the drawings. So, we realize that there's much room for improvement. There's no landscaping here. This is just to float an idea. So, budget. Don't kill the messenger. There's 2 things I'd like to discuss here. How long does it take? How much does it cost? Well, regrettably, on average, every pier my wife and I visited over the past 5 or 6 weeks, on average, took 4.9 years to build from approval of funds. This is not from a group of residents talking about it. This is from approval of funds. What's it cost? We have no idea, but I'm going to throw some numbers up there anyway. We asked a few people. None of us are contractors. None of us build piers. However, we feel option 1 could be built for 18 to 22 million, and option 2 could be built for 34 to 38 million. Now, funding. Visitors to Lee County last year spent over $4.1 billion in our county. Now, I hope no one minds, but I rounded up to the closest 100. Of that $4.1 billion in direct local taxes collected was $126 million. This isn't recirculated money. This is direct local taxes. The TDC, Tourist Development Council, they collected over $57.5 million in 2021. Of course, needs to be mentioned, the HUD CDBG funds of $1.1 billion you may have been reading about in the paper. First, I would like to applaud Town Manager Andy and Mayor Dan for approaching the Lee County Commissioners and expressing our concerns and our ideas with the allocated funds or proposed allocated funds. But you'll notice there's absolutely zero in for economic revitalization. So, what does $38 million look like? 3.4% of the CDBG 1.1 billion. 30.1% of annual direct local taxes collected, or 66% of the annual TDC tax collection. Now, when my wife and I owned a manufacturing business in New Jersey, and we were looking at capital expenditures for the next year, and we were looking at the latest, fanciest, expensive piece of equipment, it paid for itself in under a year. We didn't talk about it, we bought it. So, it would take, and I know funding doesn't work like this, but I have to use the visual. It would take 110 days of local taxes collected to pay for a very nice new pier. Or the increased parking over 10 years will raise over $20 million at our current rates. The county's current rates, excuse me. So, thank you for your time. The committee that I've had the fortune to work with has been amazing. I would like to open it up with our committee members if anybody has any questions and to discuss potential new next steps, or if any of the members at large would like to say a few words.
Some of your conceptual renderings that you showed are all aerial. Do you have anything that shows street level or on a human scale?
Question is about street level. Wants to see
Sure, it's
street
a
level.
16-foot elevated plaza. The reason being, the lowest height that the Times Square businesses will be is 19, potentially 21 if they take advantage of freeboard. So we wanted the height of the pier and the plaza to meet up with those businesses. So we're assuming there's about 3 foot of elevation in Times Square. High tide, we need to be 19 above. It's rendered at 16 feet of elevation above Estero Boulevard. Could potentially be 18 feet. Now, ironically, if you look across the street, it will not block anybody's view. Perhaps 7-Eleven. Mayor Dan. Yes.
Dan is asking about the cost
One
analysis
not open yet,
when he visited the other piers.
comparable in size, much wider, but not as and longer, I believe, was 20 million. Originally budgeted 14. Let's hope it's not like residential construction and just triple. Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, with the one beach where they were removing the
Yes,
floataway
the
prior
floataway
to-
decking.
What's involved with that?
Question about the
It's a-
removable wood.
It's a forklift, and they have it down to 1 day. 1 day. They're rather large panels. There's about 18 foot in width, and there's 2 stringers, two runs of them. And depending on the intensity of the storm, depending on the intensity of the storm, they'll either remove them to their first shade structure or their second. They've had great success with it. (150 by 500 feet). It's the approximate size of Lynn Hall Park.
Question was about elevation.
A lot. We randomly chose restrooms for 1,200, but it could accommodate a heck of a lot more. So I mean, there's going to be an increase of visitors to Times Square in the thousands, not hundreds.
Extra traffic is the
We
question.
feel that this has the potential, and I got to say this, and I respect your question. We asked every town, what bothers you about this town? And don't judge us, but it was usually asked to the bartenders we interviewed after the town staff, was traffic and parking. Every single community, that was the 2 concerns that most people had. We feel taking 90 cars off of the people circulating looking for a parking spot will help reduce the congestion. And we feel between Margaritaville, potentially Arches, Pink Shell, what's going on at Mantanzas and the Lighthouse will be mostly pedestrian traffic. Foot traffic, no cars. I wouldn't dare want to say it, but if you want to add 300 more spots, make it 2 levels, but I'm not saying that.
Ellen, there's a question from the audience too. question is
It's a great question. I
Environmental
wish I
impact.
had an answer for you.
environmental
Uh,
impact.
I don't foresee any. Of course, it would all have to go through the DEP and all the usual bureaus and government agencies, but we did not see one pier less than 20 feet in width. Sir. Lynn
Parking revenue.
Lynn
question.
Hall Park's controlled by the county, and they collect that parking revenue. Absolutely. I mean, I know funding doesn't work like this, but you could probably float a bond if you had to and just guarantee it with the parking revenue. We're anxious. It's our hope that Let's Go FMB endorses this presentation so we can present it to the town council. And then if town council gets buy-in, we'd love to present it to the Lee County commissioners. Oh, I thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I haven't worn long pants in 5 years, so I'm going to go change, but I'll be around. Guys, what do you think about it? Yes.
I want to thank everybody. We'll be talking about this right afterwards. Really appreciate all the visitors that we've had here. And I would challenge anybody or any consulting group that we could have had in here to do a better job than the Let's Go Peer Committee has done. So I'm again going to thank you. You guys are amazing. And I can tell you that within a couple of minutes of this meeting, oh, please come on up and introduce some of our visitors that we have here. Oh, you know what? We are actually live streaming this, and we had well over 100 people.
That's great.
Online. So that's
First time that's ever happened. My name is Ray Sandilli. I'm the County Commissioner for District 3. I followed Larry Kiker after his unfortunate passing. I was not looking to get into politics. I was just a happy resident of Lee County. And I got tapped by Governor DeSantis in 19 and has exceeded my expectations, in part for the people in this community here. I have with me today the guys that support us totally as a county. Dave Horner's our county manager, and Rob Price. And Rob Price, who for all the roads out there, he's the guy who's taught me more about roads than anybody else, maybe with his partner and so on and so forth. I know every pothole and I know everything that needs to be fixed and so on and so forth. First of all, I want to thank everybody. Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day. You know, my brother was in the Pentagon in 9/11 when it got hit. Very personal for us and so on and so forth. Tomorrow is a very personal day for all of us. You know, and it was. I was in a helicopter with the sheriff the day after the storm. And probably like most of you, I just couldn't process what I saw. 2 days after that, Dan Allers and I were walking around downtown, and I said, Dan, I don't even recognize the place. Everything's gone. And so when you think about starting from that point and going forward, probably the question we get most is, why does it take so long? And the only way I can explain it is to say you got to break down that 11 or 12 months into segments. The first 2 months, we were concerned about finding our neighbors. You know, where are they? And I will tell you, I stood with the sheriff almost every day, and he wanted to know not only how many people were lost, but why they were lost. Did they drown? Were we in a structure that collapsed or whatever? He felt very strongly, I think we all did, that we owed that to family members to know what happened. So you take the first 45, 60 days after that, and then we had no water, no power. So we had to drive bring a water line in starting from the south to the north. Do 1,000 feet, pressurize it, see if it holds. If that good, another 1,000 feet. And we had to do that for the whole island. Debris, how much debris did we have to pick up? And it's not like calling Waste Management and asking them to come by and make 2 passes. We had to get a company, out of state with the right trucks and everything. And Alan, I'm an Italian from New Jersey, and that was one of the best presentations I've ever seen as far as data and stuff. And I suck up to all the Italians. Very well done to you and the team. That's right. So you break it down, and so you go through to the essential utilities. At the same time, we're trying to deal with people who want to come onto the island, and that caused issues with trying to get the debris out of the way, tending to people and everything. So you can go through that 11-month period. You can take easily 6 months out of that, from the initial things that we need to do to get our feet underneath us, and then you start with the rebuild process and so on and so forth. So just like the timing for a pier, everything. Dave and I, Rob, we're dealing with 850,000 people, whatever number you want to use. We're bigger than a few states, in Lee County. So there was a lot of issues to be addressed. And certainly the influence from business and pleasure, the barrier islands are very important. Not only dealing just with Fort Myers Beach, but you've I'm sure read a lot and heard a lot about some of the issues we have going on some of the other barrier islands. So all these things have to work, together. Nothing stands alone. Everything needs to be connected. The only way it gets done is for exactly what you're doing, is when everybody's involved. And everybody needs to be involved in a positive way. I can assure you, I was not looking to have a political position. I was on vacation on a barrier island up in New Jersey when the phone rang and it was the governor. And at first I thought I was getting punked by my friends because I was on vacation. 4 days later, I'm in the seat once I found the building. But it's been an amazing experience, not only for the elected officials I met and the team that I work with, but for all of you. I mean, I have been stunned about how resilient we are as a community. And I've been surfing since I'd stand up on a surfboard. When I couldn't paddle anymore, I started kiteboarding, so I've been in the water a good part of my life. The challenge that we have in part, and I'll ask Dave or Rob to come up here, you're an incorporated area, and we respect that. People incorporated for a reason. They wanted to have a local voice, and we respect that. So certainly mine, and I think the team, is not to come in and tell you what you should do. We're here as a partner, and we have to balance all the other needs that we have along with your priorities. Part of getting started on the vision, understanding we were looking for people, we were looking for essential services, we were looking to get the debris out of the way. So that vision thing took some time to get to. I talk to Dan Allers every day. I have to wait. He's probably out of the shower by now. I can give him a call now. And we talk every day. And I'm down here at least one day a week. So I'm pretty familiar. I've driven the island every week since the storm. So we're involved, but we want to partner with you. And we respect the fact that we want to help deliver what you want within the means, that we have. And understand that it's easy to say, yeah, we'd like to do that, and wish we had a checkbook to do that. A lot of the money, as you all know, came from the federal government. And with those funds, be it grants or some of the other ones, they all come with attachments. You have to do things a certain way. We're picking up debris. People say, why can't you just get it done faster? Well, see those little towers that were out there? There's people in the towers from FEMA. They wanted to know where that truck was coming from. They wanted to know when it came into the site, this goes from Fort Myers Beach, this goes to Estero, so on and so forth. They had to account for that. And if they didn't account for that way, we weren't going to get reimbursed. And reimbursement is a big part of making this all happen. So it's never fast enough, and it never seems like it's enough. But that's the reality of the world we're working in. But when you take a look at, 1 year from tomorrow, it's pretty remarkable what the communities have done by working together. It's tough because everybody's opinionated. Everybody has a thought. They're very strongly about something. But, I was thinking as you were talking, Alan, when I was a kid, I came from an Italian family. The whole family was in the trades. My father would come home. He was a bricklayer. you cut the grass today? Yep. Come here. Is that a straight line? Well, kind of straight, yeah. You know, because he wanted it done a certain way. Go get the mower and do it again. And that's how I grew up. You know, and I think a lot of us are that way. We came from families, fortunately, in most cases, that wanted it done a certain way and do it right. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do this right within the parameters that we have. Is it fast enough? Is there enough money? Probably not, but we'll get there. And so, Dave, Rob, I don't know if you want to say a few words and stuff like this. I will tell you that whatever I do, most of the, hopefully it's right, but the team around me is like any other team, the ones that support you and everything. And so I go to them for divine intervention most days. Dave Horn.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon. What I can tell you is our board is committed to rebuilding the pier. They've talked about it numerous times. I don't think there's a week that goes by that we do not hear from one of our board members asking where we are with the pier. I think the biggest issue that we're dealing with right now, and I think you are all very aware of this, is the process. Right now, we are almost through the FEMA process. It's at the final stage with FEMA regarding the pier itself. Lynn Hall is a little bit behind that. They separated those two projects. The pier is a little bit, the pier is ahead of that. We're waiting for them to give us a cost estimate, and we're looking at resiliency. So some of the components you're talking about are something that obviously we're looking at as well. What we typically do, and we have a very good working relationship with the town. We work collectively. I think the ultimate goal is how we can work together to bring this community back. I think that when if the town decides they want to look at something, they typically send a letter to our commissioners, and a lot of times we workshop it. So our board will have a workshop before they have a meeting to discuss it. It is a meeting, but not an official meeting. They have a workshop so they can discuss these issues and kind of give staff direction. And I assume that would be the next step. What our board would expect from us is they would expect us to bring something in, show them the dollar amount that we received from FEMA, talk about other options, and then let them workshop it, give us direction, work with the town as we move forward. So that's typically the process we would go through. It is a long process, unfortunately. And your point of how long it takes to build something back, it's why it's called, unfortunately, it's why it's called long-term recovery. It takes a long time. So just be aware that our board is very cognizant and really wants this to happen and happen soon. So, and our commissioner, district commissioner is on top of it as well. So, yep.
So I'm more than happy to stay around, answer some questions, Dave and Rob and myself. And I'd be remiss when I first got a call I was up in New Jersey when I got a call from the governor to come back. First call I got was from this guy over here from Beach Talk Radio, Ed Ryan. He said, I'd like to have you come down and do the show, stuff like that. Really? Okay. So I got down there. I went home. My wife says, how was that? I said, interesting man. But I do want to thank Ed and his wife. I do want to thank Ed and his wife because for whatever we do internally, whether it's the town, whether it's the population, whatever, you need a voice. And, and I think Ed has done a good job. I agree with him on some things. Sometimes I have to shake my head, and stuff like this. But thank you, Ed, for being the voice of the beach. And we look forward. Thank you, everybody. We'll be hanging around for a while.
Thank you all so much. I just wanted everybody to have an overview.